The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. It is Wrestlemania Saturday at the Nerdcast Empire. By the time you listen to this, it'll probably be the early hours of Sunday morning as we are recording this podcast immediately after the first night of WrestleMania. And we're super excited to be able to bring you 3 podcasts in 3 days. Of course, coming up about this time tomorrow, we will have the second night of WrestleMania recapped on the Nerdcast Empire. And then probably less than 12 hours after that, you'll get the newest edition of Music Mondays, which will be reviewing the music from March the 22nd, which was another really good day in music. But tonight we're talking WrestleMania. We've got the entire crew with us. Joining us in the studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. Not a bad first night. Not a bad weekend of wrestling so far, to be honest.
It has been. That's another thing I want to point out before we continue around the horn. Also, next Sunday's episode of the Nerdcast Empire, we're going to be talking about the best of the rest from this weekend because we have NXT TakeOver. We have the Collective that we've watched quite a few matches from. Mike's watched a few more than I have, but it's been a really good weekend of wrestling. We're going to kind of recap all that in next week's edition of the Nerdcast Empire. So 3 of the next 4 podcasts, we're talking wrestling. I hope you enjoy that. And then we've got some big stuff coming later in the month of April. Joining us in studio tonight is Rachel. Rachel, how's it going?
It is going good. I'm glad to finally be back. It's been a bit.
You've been on the road. You've been busy. So great
yes,
to have you back. And we're going to be talking wrestling, which is always enjoyable. Joining us from Parts Unknown, as always, is Chris. Chris, how's it going?
Going pretty great. First WrestleMania I've gotten to sit down with in a while. So excited to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely a good night overall. I think if you were doing the thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle, I think it gets a very solid thumbs up overall. A few critiques that we're going to get to kind of right off the bat, but overall, I think it was a very positive night and a lot of really good wrestling. And certainly, I think overall, the effort from everybody involved was outstanding, whether it was the wrestlers in the ring, the commentators, the crew. Just did a really fantastic job, made a great first night of WrestleMania. But we're going to get right to it. We're going to break down 4 of the 7 matches in detail. And the other 3 we're going to kind of go lightning round on to kind of just give you the gist of what went down. One final reminder, of course, it contains spoilers. So if you have not watched night 1 of WrestleMania and you're wanting to do that before you get the results, you're going to want to stop the podcast here, watch WrestleMania, come back and check us out afterward. We're going to start off with the main event, and the main event was The Rock and Roman Reigns taking on Cody Rhodes and Seth freaking Rollins, with the stipulation being bloodline rules tomorrow night for Roman and Cody's title match. If The Rock and Reigns win, Cody and Seth win supposedly a one-on-one match tomorrow night. And it was The Rock and Roman Reigns winning a lengthy match, especially if you count the entrances, which went over 20 minutes from the time they started to the time the bell rang. They threw everything in the kitchen sink at this match for sure. And I don't usually get to go first because I'm usually the one that's passing it around. I have asked and we're going to allow me to go first this time because I do have some thoughts on this one. And I'm usually not as opinionated on it. But overall, first off, I want to say the work for these 4 guys, outstanding. And The Rock to be in the kind of shape he's in, haven't wrestled a full match in over a decade. Outstanding job. I thought they did a great job. I think the result was the right result. My problem with it is the way they got there. And my critique is mainly because the one thing that has been very consistent under the Triple H regime is logical booking. Things make sense. They kind of threw that out the window in this match by bringing back the evil authority figure. And it's the most overplayed trope in WWE history, with whether it was the McMahons or evil general manager or the anonymous general manager, having that bad guy authority figure for the hero to overcome. In this case, it was The Rock telling the referee not to count him out or he would be fired. And then basically they just proceeded to cheat the rest of the match. It blew logic holes in the entire thing. It just didn't make any sense. You could have made it a no DQ match because you needed a winner. So why not just go ahead and do that from the start, or just say, hey, just as a preview, tonight is bloodline rules. And if you don't want tomorrow to also be bloodline rules, you need to win. It just didn't make any sense. They cheated through the whole match, yet there was no bloodline interference, which also didn't make any sense. Like, you have the opportunity to use your entire squad and then you don't. Again, I think the result was right. I think it's going to get us to the logical finish tomorrow night, which is Cody winning after the entire nonsense being thrown out at that match. You know, there's rumors of John Cena coming in. There's rumors of Stone Cold Steve Austin coming in. I think you're going to see everything thrown into that match. It's going to be the most overbooked Cody Rhodes match in history, which says a lot if you know his history. But I think that's where we're headed. I just did not care for the way we got there. That's just my opinion. Otherwise, technically very solid. The right result. Just have some qualms about the way they got there, considering WWE's done such a good job of not really doing that in their matches. I will throw it to Mike for his thoughts next.
Yeah, no, overall, I enjoyed the match. I thought the work done was great. I don't even necessarily mind the Evil Authority so much when you plot and plan around it accordingly. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for there to be a match to determine the rules for night 2 if The Rock can change the rules on a whim. Why wouldn't he just automatically say, we're not going to have that first match and it's going to be Bloodline rules, and too bad. It seems like there's extra work being done that doesn't need to happen when The Rock can stipulate things on a whim. But we all kind of figured this is how it was going to end up with Bloodline rules tomorrow to give us the crazy, chaotic booking. Personally, what I would like to see is, based on the treatment of the referee tonight, is whoever the planned referee is for tomorrow basically say, look, I'm not doing it. They have to scramble to find a fill-in referee, and they bring in Stone Cold. I know that's completely out of left field, but I think that would be a great way to kind of counteract The Rock threatening the referee mid-match.
Yeah, that's certainly a very legitimate possibility. I think I would certainly keep that open as a possibility for tomorrow night. Rachel, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think Michael Cole said it best during the match when he said, this is just stupid. It's like there was no rhyme or reason to what was going on. The ref couldn't do anything. Apparently, at one point, he went over to Cody and even apologized, like, there's nothing I can do. I mean, yeah, the finish was exactly what I expected. I even told my husband, who swore it was not going to happen. I'm like, no, it's Rock and Roman makes the most sense to win night 1, to have Bloodline rules night 2. I think they could have got there differently, like you said, but it is what it is at this point.
It's troubling it took them so long to win under those conditions, actually.
Right. Well, if you're the final boss, like, why do you need to cheat? Like, you should be able to just wipe the floor with these two guys.
And again, why do you have basically no rules and then don't have Solo Sikoa involved? I understand Jimmy Uso wrestled, so you can at least say he got beat. Maybe he was injured, couldn't come out. But, again, because in the Vince era, I would have felt not as bad about it because this was very common under the Vince regime. But Triple H has done a much better job of avoiding this, which makes me think The Rock basically came in and dictated that this is how it was going to go. And they kind of had to go along with it, which, again, that's how we got into this mess in the first place, with The Rock coming in and demanding to be in the main event.
It feels like The Rock is thinking about the end of the story without putting a whole lot of thought into the path to get there. Because it's always like, hey, enjoy the story we're telling. Like, he already knows the end, obviously. Just sit back and let it happen.
That's a Vince thing.
Yeah.
100%. Vince could get to the end of a story and tell a great story. Unfortunately, the steps to get there a lot of times didn't make any sense. And you can tell a better story when all the steps make sense to get to the end of the story. Chris, let's bring you in from Parts Unknown. Of course, you watched this separately, so I'm definitely curious to get your thoughts, because we kind of all maybe a little hive mind just because we discussed it during the event, but curious to see what you thought of it.
Nope, I'm right there with you. I was thinking the same thing the entire match. Kind of mixed feelings. It does add to the heel character that The Rock has built and brought back. It does stack the deck against Cody like we expected. I loved his face at the end there, like, wow, I am really screwed. But yeah, I mean, what's the point of having no Bloodline rules being a potential outcome when clearly The Rock can just add it right back in? And I'm curious how it was for the live crowd. I mean, obviously, we got to hear the announcers kind of explain, The Rock is telling the ref not to count. He's telling them, do what I say. But can the crowd there really hear that? Or do they just see all this, obvious disqualification things happening during a regular tag team match? And they're like, I guess they've just thrown it out the window. And I imagine it also had to be kind of jarring to have to watch two different fights happening on opposite ends of the arena, because I know it was jarring just from my standpoint when they brought up the dual camera view. It seems like they were still trying to kind of get a hang of how they were going to handle that. But I think it did add to the match. It definitely made it more exciting, even though it kind of trounced whatever they had going for the story. And you kind of needed that to round out the show, I guess. So good match overall. I definitely would have leaned somewhere else for the story. And I do, to Mike's credit, feel like this is going to bring the involvement of at least a Stone Cold, Cena, if not both, like people have been rumoring for a little bit, to come out and kind of help Cody and get the deck stack back in his order.
I think Mike brought up a really good point, and then we'll move on to the next match. Mike said that he really felt like it was them trying to remind you how you felt after night 2 of WrestleMania last year, in case you didn't remember how devastating it was, even down to the very same camera shots being used. And again, the production side of it for WWE. I mean, they had some bobbles with the Titantron and stuff, but overall, like their camera work, stuff like that is so much farther ahead where it used to be. But clearly they wanted to bring that feeling back. I wish they would have been a little more logical about getting there, but as far as the result, makes total sense. And it's going to set up, I'm sure, a very chaotic finish to night 2, I would think. Because if Roman retains after all this, they might as well just let Cody go back to AEW, because his character is going to be dead as far as WWE goes. But that is the opener, and certainly overall a really good match. Next up, we'll talk about the women's world title match. It's actually kicked off the night, and it was a really good match that opened the show, that ended with Rhea Ripley winning over Becky Lynch in 17-10 with a riptide, first off the turnbuckle and then in the middle of the ring. We'll start with Rachel this time. A really good opener, certainly kind of set the tone for the first night of WrestleMania.
Oh, it was a great match, and I expected Rhea to retain. That didn't surprise me. What amazed me was Becky going out there having dealt with strep all week, having a 102-degree fever, having my daughter herself has to have her tonsils taken out this summer because her strep. I've seen it. It's nasty. I didn't realize how bad it was. So for her to go out there, I mean, they went out first on purpose, but for her to put on such a good match, she looked great, even if she was sick. I mean, it was a fantastic match.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was a good way to open the night. Chris, your thoughts? Rhea Ripley retaining over Becky Lynch to extend her title reign to over a year now.
Yeah, absolute amazing way to start off the night. You had Motionless in White out there performing Rhea's theme song, and kind of took us all aback at first because we thought it was Rhea doing her own theme song. Yeah, amazing match. I don't know that Rhea is capable at this point of putting on a bad match, and she has this championship reign that, even though it's extended, it's not wearing on me. And I'm not upset to see Becky Lynch take the loss in this one. It's believable, and I'm all here for this Ripley reign.
Well, she's been dominant, and honestly, even as a heel and continuing to try to heel it up in the build to this match, Ripley was clearly the babyface among the crowd. Not a huge surprise there. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, you always kind of go back to the thought of this no longer being the Vince era, so to speak, and I think evidence of that can be them not just bailing on Rhea when she's at top form to give the belt back to someone like a Becky or Charlotte or anything like that. They're letting her actually ride this wave of being really one of the biggest stars in the company, and certainly the biggest women's star in the company. I don't think there's any signs of it slowing down either. I don't know how long this is going to hold out, but she's just super popular right now. So let's not blow this.
I think we'll be curious to see where the Judgment Day goes from here, because obviously we're going to talk a little bit later about the tag team ladder match. And then, of course, what Damian Priest is or is not going to do with the briefcase, and Dominic Mysterio in a match we'll talk about here in just a few minutes. But going to be interesting to see if at some point they decide to break Rhea away from them to basically lean into her being the cool baby face, because the crowd's already treating her that way. It's a shame in a way that Raquel Rodriguez has had to deal with her health issues, because to me, she was a logical person to come in and turn heel and join the Judgment Day and basically boot Rhea Ripley out of the group. But unfortunately, with her health situation, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. We wish her the best. Hopefully she'll get back into the ring soon. I think next on the horizon for Ripley, in all likelihood, is probably Liv Morgan, because definitely some personal issues there, and will be certainly interesting to see the build to that match.
That'll be challenging because, again, you're supposed to cheer for Liv Morgan in that scenario, and I don't think anyone's going to, unfortunately.
I almost think they probably should lean into maybe a crazy character with her as well and see. And I think they might be a more aggressive style. Could be good. We'll see. Obviously, they're both really good, so hopefully that works out well. But again, kudos to Becky Lynch for going out there sick. Did a great job, as always. She's so good. Be an interesting upcoming spring and summer with her contract coming up. Certainly have to keep an eye on that. We're going to go to the lightning round now for our next two matches before we go to the break. We're going to, instead of getting everybody's thoughts, we're just going to go to one member of the Nerdcast Empire to get their thoughts. We're going to start with Rachel, and the next match is Jay and Jimmy Uso in a brother versus brother showdown that ended up going to Jay in only 11 minutes and 7 seconds, which was a little bit on the short side, in my opinion, but felt very much like the NXT main event earlier today with Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes. We'll talk about that on next week's podcast. But Rachel, your thoughts on the Usos in singles competition?
I was really excited about this match going into it because I thought, they're great. They were great as a tag team. I mean, they always put on a great match, but I was kind of left just bored by it. I feel like it was way too short. I feel like it didn't always sync like they do as twins. I mean, it's almost like their timing was off. It made Jay kind of look stupid at one point when, Jimmy's apologizing, like, I'm sorry. I want, like, kind of how he wants to reconcile. And then he, hits him. So plenty of super kicks in the match, which is what I expected. I wanted Jay to win. And that makes the most sense. I expected that. But I felt like there's a lot lacking in the match that I was kind of surprised. I expected it to be a lot more fast paced and exciting, and it just wasn't.
Kind of felt like this might not be the end for them, I think. I think that was the conclusion we came to at the end of NXT today as well. And I think this could very well be the same thing. We may see those two again in the ring before they eventually, I would assume, mend fences, but there's a lot of water, I think, to cross under that bridge before we get there. So again, Jey Uso winning the brother battle. The biggest favorites of the night, certainly winning to no surprise. It was Jade Cargill, Bianca Belair, and Naomi against Damage Control. And it was Jade and Bianca and Naomi winning. And what was an entertaining match, albeit a short match, but certainly the heels got their offense in, but the baby faces come out on top. We're going to throw it to Chris for his quick thoughts on the 6-woman tag match that ended up being, to me, was a pretty solid match.
Yeah, I agree. And it's hard to go against a super group like Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill, and Naomi. If I had any complaints at that, the match was the shortest of the night, just coming in at 8 minutes. I would have liked to see some more from this group of girls, but I think it did what it needed to do. Jade Cargill obviously getting the win in this one and looking crisp in her moveset. I think we're going to see even more of her going forward, so I hope this continues to snowball. And I don't know a lot of her work previously, but just kind of judging from her pin style and just kind of some of her showmanship during and before the match, I feel like she would be a shoo-in for an amazing heel. So I'm not sure how quickly that turnabout's going to come, but I think she'd fit right in. But absolutely great showing. Like I said, I wish we would have taken maybe some of the minutes from some of the other matches, maybe even the Uso match that went about 3 minutes longer, and just extend that a little bit. But overall, great match. Did what it needed to do. Yeah,
I think that's a good way to describe it. It's certainly a good showcase there to get them on the card, and kind of the same feeling I have after that match that we had after the NXT 6-woman tag match that we'll talk about next week, that they're kind of in need of a mid-card women's title on the main roster as well, because they have a lot of women and they're going to be adding to that presumably as you start getting into the draft early in the spring. So probably need some more titles to chase after. So we'll see how that shakes out. We're going to step aside for a break. We come back. We are going to talk about the Intercontinental title match, and would Gunther's reign continue past 666 days, or would Sami Zayn be the one to dethrone Gunther? We'll also talk about that tag team ladder match and the tag match between Rey Mysterio, Andrade, Santos Escobar, and Dominic. We'll do that on the other side of this time out here on the Nerdcast Empire. Back on the Nerdcast Empire, WrestleMania Night 1 has just completed. Of course, this podcast being uploaded in the early morning hours of Sunday morning. And don't forget to check out our website at nerdcastempire.com. You can check out our store and get your Nerdcast Empire merch at nerdcastempire.com/store. Don't forget, normally this is the spot where I would remind you of Music Mondays, but we're actually going to have another podcast in between. About 24 hours from now, you will see Night 2 of WrestleMania podcast. We'll all get together again. Will Cody finally finish the story? And what is that story going to look like? How many pages are going to be in that book before we finally get to the conclusion? That'll be coming up tomorrow night. And then Music Monday will hit you on Monday. And we're going to be taking a look at the music from March the 22nd. And looking forward to that as always. Now let's get to the Intercontinental title match. It was Gunther, 666-day reign with the Intercontinental Championship, taking on Sami Zayn, who has been coached up by Chad Gable and then motivated by all the important people in his life. First his wife and his kid, and then Chad Gable, and then of course Kevin Owens as he's ready to go through the curtain, giving him one final piece of motivation. And indeed it was Sami Zayn who ends Gunther's reign at 666 days, hitting him with a brainbuster on the buckle and then finally a haluva kick to finish him off at 15:30 to win the Intercontinental Championship. I would say safely that the Intercontinental Championship has never felt more important in a title change as this one did, and that's full credit to Gunther and his reign. But an amazing match that Sami Zayn ends up getting the win. Chris, we'll start with you this time. Your thoughts on Zayn and Gunther?
Yeah, I'm not entirely happy that Gunther lost, but that's no detriment to the match. I mean, he has to lose the title at some point, especially if he's going to move up to the World Championship or higher. And it was a hell of a match. I mean, Sammy bringing back the Brain Buster was definitely a surprise, and was excited to see that. I think it did something well. I mean, you had this story leading up on the Rocky-esque story they were building. I still didn't want to believe that Gunther was going to lose, but obviously that's what happened. But you have Gunther kind of pulling that Ivan Drago, like talking up constantly throughout the match, just showboating, looking at Sammy's wife, and it pulled something off that I think the Uso match wasn't able to do, in that you have all that talking, but they are still mixing in a healthy dose of amazing wrestling. I mean, Gunther's power bombs haven't looked more painful than they did in that match. Like you said, the Intercontinental Championship hasn't been more important than it is right now, and my only hope is that doesn't change with the Sami Zayn reign. I hope that they change him from this underdog that he has been consistently to, hey, I've got a championship now, I actually have some power, and keep him as a believable contender and not just constantly fighting from the bottom now that he has the title.
Yeah, I think that's a good call there. And I think that is clearly, as you look at the match and recap, and we'll go to Mike next, this is one of the first times I've seen Gunther in all of his title defenses, even back to NXT UK, and where he basically did the heel thing you're not supposed to do, which is take your opponent lightly and play around with your food, not just finish off your opponent. This is one of the first times he didn't do that, and Sami Zayn made him pay for him and beat him for it.
It does kind of feel like over the months you've seen that level of respect for his opponent deteriorate to where each new contender was kind of like, yeah, I know I'm better than you. You don't have a chance, whatever. And, you know, finally that catches up with you. It's kind of interesting, both like when Gunther first won the Intercontinental title, I'm pretty sure my reaction was, oh, well, I'm kind of surprised they gave that to him. And not much else. It didn't really seem like that big of a deal. Fast forward to now, and this feels ultra important. And on top of that, when you think of Sami Zayn last having a mid-card title, he was like the Weasley heel that kind of lucked into keeping it. And it just, he's not the same guy that you saw then. And I just have to wonder, and I mentioned this during the live broadcast, was, are we going to start seeing, especially someone like Sami Zayn or a Kevin Owens, are we going to see them just stay booked super strong, almost as a thank you for sticking around in WWE during the less enjoyable times when they could have easily probably made more of an impact in AEW than some of the people who did go to AEW. I just wonder if there's a certain loyalty aspect from Triple H that's going to lead to them just staying relevant.
Well, and I'll even add to that. Not only did they stay with WWE, but they were probably on a very short list of the most entertaining performers during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Kevin Owens jumping off the WrestleMania sign in the Performance Center, Sami Zayn with his conspiracy theory gimmick. And you add in Bayley, and maybe Bayley will get her flowers tomorrow night. But you just feel like they all kind of survived that really tough time and thrived and kind of kept the product interesting when it could have very easily been unwatchable. So, yeah, I think give them their flowers, and Sami Zayn certainly deserve it. Rachel, your thoughts?
I mean, I didn't expect Sami Zayn to win. I mean, Mike always says, you know, you pick the person, like pick someone like Gunther to win until he doesn't. Like, I picked Gunther because I was so sure until Sammy came out to the ring and they did the whole inspirational thing with Gable and Sammy's wife and kid and Kevin. Then it's like, oh, that seed of doubt has been planted. Now they might actually do this and give it to Sammy. And I was so excited to see that for Sammy. I think he's done so much, even with like the whole bloodline thing, like to give him something, give him a title. I think he more than deserves it. And it was a fantastic match. And even Gunther talking crap to Sammy's wife and her just giving it right back to him. It was perfect. I couldn't have planned it better.
Yeah, they did a great job because honestly, I wasn't 100% buying into it. And I really felt like they kind of set Sami Zayn up to not get the full effect when they had him and Chad Gable be the last two in that match to qualify. And even Zayn, I guess, had mentioned kind of bummed out the fans didn't really jump behind him, but they did a great job of kind of recovering that. And then, like you said, how they build up to the match right before, perfect, and definitely put the crowd solidly behind him.
I think it's really a testament to how well they're treating the talent at this point in the eyes of the fans. Is that I just don't think they realize how connected you feel to so many of the wrestlers now. Like Chad Gable how he still has a job at this point, considering some of what he went through, the Shorty G era. I couldn't have cared any less about this man. And over the past year or so, he's a big deal. He's someone that you really want to see constantly, at least in that mid-card title picture.
And presumably he's going to get a title shot now, as he now is owed a favor by Sami Zayn. So I would imagine we're going to see that, and that should be a really, really good match. But a momentous moment. And honestly, in hindsight, I probably would have closed the show with this. I know that wouldn't have been popular with a lot of people because The Rock is The Rock and Reigns and all that star power. But that's a send the fans home happy moment and a shocking moment. But then again, maybe you telegraph the finish if you put it at the end too, because Gunther winning to end the pay-per-view doesn't carry the same feelings as Rock and Roman winning or whatever. So really great match. Happy for Sami Zayn. Happy for Gunther as well, who's been an amazing champion and has made the Intercontinental Championship very important for the first time in a long time. Before we get to our next match, I did want to update everybody on Pro Wrestling Scorecards today. Starting with Stand and Deliver, Rachel ended up being the winner for Stand and Deliver, which was a tough card, to be honest with you. I'm amazed I finished last, but I'm amazed I'm not farther behind because I really struggled with that card. And looks like I came out on top for night one of WrestleMania with 83 points. Mike was 77, Rachel 71, and Chris was 69. So,
which means Bloodline rules tomorrow.
That's right. There are no rules to tomorrow's podcast.
Yes.
Bloodline rules for the podcast tomorrow night. But we'll see how night 2 goes when we get around to making our picks for that. Of course, if you're not on Pro Wrestling Scorecards, you should definitely check that out. It's a lot of fun, a good way to follow along with the event. Let's move on to the 6-pack ladder match, which gave them the opportunity to do something that they've been needing to do for a long time, and that was to split the tag team titles back up. In theory, one team could have won both sets of titles, but they didn't go that route. The overall match went about 17 plus minutes, 17:35, in fact, and it was A-Town Down Under that won the SmackDown tag titles about halfway through the match, and then it was Awesome Truth able to climb the ladder and give the fans that really first big pop of the night for a winner, although Rhea Ripley certainly was a popular winner as well. But Truth pulls down, he gets his first WrestleMania win, and the fans, of course, loved it, and why wouldn't you? Mike, we'll start with you this time. Your thoughts on that wild tag team ladder match?
I remember when they first announced this match was going to happen, my immediate reaction was, okay, here's your opportunity. You can now split these titles up. You're in a position where you have enough quality tag teams that one set of titles just doesn't get it done. There are a lot of people spinning their wheels. A team like the Creeds weren't even involved in WrestleMania as a result, or Pretty Deadly. There's so much more out there that could be featured, and here's the opportunity to break these things apart. Really happy for A-Town Down Under. I feel like they're a team that people give a lot of crap to, and I don't really know why, but both of them are extremely talented. I think sometimes Austin Theory specifically kind of still has that Vince McMahon stink on him, where that whole, he's kind of the chosen one kind of thing, very Drew McIntyre-esque. I think that's he's not really recovered from that in people's eyes, but I think they're both really good. And I've said this whole time that R-Truth is the one comedy wrestler that you wouldn't have any problem seeing win titles. He's still, at his age, such a great performer, so entertaining that even with the comedic stuff, he doesn't seem out of place winning. And I think that's something that a lot of the comedy acts, like you couldn't see Santino doing that on a regular basis, or comedy acts in other companies maybe, but super glad for them. I like any time that you can have The Miz as a face and it works with people. I love the match.
You mentioned earlier about Chad Gable, like how this guy keep his job. How did R-Truth keep his job? I mean, he got saddled with the 24/7 title gimmick, which eventually got retired, thrown in the garbage, whatever you want to say. But he at any point could have been one of those cuts when they were making cuts of people that were basically in catering, not doing a whole lot. But he was able somehow to continue to entertain Vince McMahon, which is, I think, how he kept his job. And then when Triple H took over, they're like, hey, let's let you wrestle. Let's actually let people see that even at your age, you are still one of the best. And this is a great reward for a guy who will be a WWE Hall of Famer someday for sure. And rightfully so, not even as a comedy wrestler, but just for his contributions to the industry, which is awesome to see. Rachel, your thoughts?
I mean, I love R-Truth. I mean, I even wrote that. That's the first thing I wrote down on my paper. Him getting the hot tag during the match, which is just ridiculous. But I mean, the crowd popped for it and it was perfect. Seeing Tyler Bate lift Finn Balor up with the ladder too and do the little spinny thing. I mean, Tyler Bate's just a beast. And sometimes because he's just now come back up, like you kind of forget that. Completely happy for A-Town Down Under. I think they're hilarious. Grayson Waller's kind of like ridiculous. Yeah, I thought Awesome Truth was going to win. That was perfect. I love that for R-Truth to have his moment finally. Because again, he's had a lot of the ridiculous moments, but I mean, he just came off of almost like losing a leg. Like he was really injured and like it was very serious. So the fact that he was able to come back from that and be able to be somewhat serious competitor again is just fantastic.
Yeah, just a great heartwarming story for sure. And a guy that definitely deserves all the respect. And kudos again to the administrator of the TNA Twitter account that immediately tweeted out one of his tag title wins in TNA. Those guys are always on it. I could see a future continued partnership with them and WWE. A lot of rumors about that this weekend. Chris, your thoughts on the tag team ladder match?
Yeah, I picked Awesome Truth, and I'm glad that they were able to get some of the titles. I feel like that's perfect for the fans, and it gets us a way to kind of retain that tag team, at least for a little bit, until we're ready to. I hope down the road we're just inevitably going to give these to DIY and New Catch Republic, because they were my favorite tag teams of the match, even if they didn't win. And A-Town Down Under is just the team that you want to see get beat. So it does make sense to have this heel tag team take some titles to just get wailed on later on down the road. Not my match of the night. That one goes to Sami Zayn and Gunther, but definitely my spot of the night with that insane Gargano hitting Pete Dunne with that slingshot tornado DDT through a table. I don't know how you do that and not hurt somebody, but seems like they pulled it off. And then just to add to it, Ciampa coming off the top of the ladder with his move as well. All in all, a great match. I know sometimes with these matches that have an insane amount of people, especially when there's two different sets of titles on the line, it can be kind of clunky with a lot of people just laying around. So if there's any benefit to it, it's that it didn't overstay its welcome, just barely coming in longer than the Rhea Ripley match. So it didn't overstay, and I think the results are believable and happy for everyone that was involved.
Yeah, now they're going to be able to book 2 tag divisions coming out of WrestleMania, which is going to make things great. And as Mike reminded all of us while we watched it live, you think about DIY winning the tag titles, which is going to happen somewhere down the line. SummerSlam, of course, is in Cleveland, Johnny Gargano's hometown. That makes a ton of sense to set them up to be able to win it there. And you've got plenty of other challengers that you can kind of slot in between and potentially even win the title to set up DIY, winning it potentially from some heels. I mean, you could even put the titles on Imperium and have Gargano and Ciampa win them there. So a lot of great possibilities. It makes you excited for tag team wrestling on the main roster. And honestly, it's been a long time since that has been the case as well. One final trip to the lightning round. We are going to check in on Rey Mysterio and Andrade taking on Santos Escobar and Dominic Mysterio. Match that feels very much like a Triple H match on this card. Guys that obviously Rey Mysterio would have certainly been on a card with Vince McMahon, but the other guys, it's hard to say, but overall, I thought this was a really entertaining match as well. It ended up being a win for the LWO after Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson came in to interfere in the match. Mike, you're going to take this one in the lightning round. Your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, this match, again, like so many others, did exactly what it needed to do. My personal picks in it were kind of ruined because I wasn't aware ahead of time that this was going to be the celebrity spot match, and it was, and that's totally fine. I think Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson did what they needed to do. You always kind of wonder when you see, especially someone like Jason Kelsey who has retired, does he plan on doing this maybe a little more often? Because WWE certainly wouldn't mind. You look at this match and you look at the names involved and you think, would you have guessed a couple years ago that many of these guys would still be with the company? Because they you look at your Cruz del Toro and your Joaquin Wilde, Zelina Vega, even Escobar, Angel, Humberto, Electra Lopez. any number of those, you wouldn't have really been surprised if you saw them on a list of job cuts. Not that they would deserve it, but there were times where it just felt nobody really was immune. And you look, the lucha style wrestlers haven't always been the preferred wrestling type for the WWE. I did want to kind of point out, though, that there's that spot that Joaquin Wilde does. He's done it now at least 3 times. That it first did in NXT, where they do the slingshot when he's standing on the second rope out to the floor. Just tremendous. And to think 7 years ago, this guy nearly died, or at the very least would have ended up with a colostomy bag after having a colon rupture in a match. So to think he went from that to like deathbed to doing his signature spot in front of 70,000 people at WrestleMania, it's just tremendous.
And again, almost as unbelievably as he was in the parking lot in Chicago at the All In event.
So were we.
We were there while he put on the concert as DJ Z in the All Out event with Flip Gordon. And he was the DJ. And all these years later, now he has this WrestleMania moment. It really makes you feel good overall.
He's in a major company and Flip Gordon is not.
That is true.
Would not have bet on that at that moment in time. I thought Flip Gordon was headed to the moon, and he's not even in AEW. So that's kind of crazy. Before we wrap this up, I'm putting you all on the spot because I didn't tell you we were going to do this. I want each of you to pick your MVP for the night. It can be one person. It can be a tag team. I will go first to give everybody a chance to think. My MVP of the night is going to be Rhea Ripley, who opened the show, was put in a difficult position to set the tone for the night. Obviously, Becky Lynch is part of that as well, but Rhea Ripley going to be my MVP for going out there and just killing it right off the bat and getting the tone set for a great night of WrestleMania. We'll go to Chris next. Chris, who was your MVP of the night if you had to pick one person or one tag team?
I got to go with Gunther. Like I said, it was my match of the night, and he put on an absolute clinic. And I just got to give him his flowers for making the Intercontinental Championship mean something. Sad to see it off of him, but I'm happy to see where he's going to go from here.
No question about that. We'll go to Rachel next. Rachel, your MVP of the night.
I'm going to go Becky Lynch because I just know how she has to be feeling, just seeing how my daughter Maddie feels when she's sick. But strep is just nasty. And for her to go out there and still put on an amazing match with Rhea Ripley, I think she's just a strong woman and she's a strong competitor.
No question about that. Mike, take us home. Your MVP of the night.
Wow. On the spot here. You know, this is going to be really unpopular, but The Rock.
Oh,
a man who hasn't wrestled in how many years?
Like 11.
And he goes out there and spends 40 minutes in this match. You know, this guy doesn't need to do this. He's a billionaire, I assume. I mean, highest paid actor in Hollywood. There's no need for him to do that. And you can question his motivations for doing it. But the fact is he performed tonight and everyone in that match did a great job. So yeah, what can I say?
Yeah, I mean, like I said in the open, I wasn't crazy about how they got there, but there's no disputing the effort for the 4 guys and the referee and everybody else involved in that match. They laid it all out there, did the best they could with what they were given, and certainly a worthy MVP as well. And that's going to wrap things up for night 1 of WrestleMania. We're going to be back with you again in about 24 hours time when we recap night number 2 of WrestleMania. And then about 12 hours after that, you're going to get Music Monday. 3 podcasts from the Nerdcast Empire in less than 3 days. It's going to be great content. Make sure you check them out. Make sure you share them on social media, all that good stuff. But that is going to wrap things up. A big thanks to everybody for staying late to record this tonight after night 1 of WrestleMania. Big thanks to Stove Leg Media for their continued support of our podcast. We'll be back with you again 24 hours time as we wrap up night number 2 of WrestleMania. Until then, this is Matt saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.